Well, every one of you showed up on time, so we want to respect your time this evening, and we want to get started on time. So everyone that's joined, can somebody just throw a comment in, a thumbs up? Yes, we can hear you. Before we get started, we want to make sure our audio is working. So if somebody could do that for us, that would be great before we get in too far. And while somebody's doing that, for those of you who are on, okay, Tanya, thank you very much. So we do have audio. If you don't know me, my name is Jesse Harper. I'm the superintendent of schools here, and I'll let Mr. Warren introduce himself.
Yeah, my name is Dave Warren, and I've been retired from Watkins Glen principalship for about 8 years, and since that time, I've been able to participate in other districts, like 5 different districts where I come in and fill in at times for different roles, mostly principals, but I've had the pleasure of joining the Arkport team as of the end of August this year.
Thank you. And hopefully everybody knows what these meetings are about, but I'll quickly go over that. We're really talking about 2 different topics and looking for your help in how do we make the experience for families easier at Arkport. And number 2, we're looking for some input as we look to replace our 712 principal. And so we're looking for those 2 things. We've had 1 town hall meeting already. That was last week, and that was in person. We are obviously October 3rd, we're here today, and we have 1 town hall meeting again next week on the 10th. All of these meetings are the same information, and we're having 3 in-person virtual just so that the most people can access it. Last week, we had a really good small group, and it was an informal conversation as I went through, myself and Mr. Warren went through our points, and we really want to make sure that this is an open conversation. So for some of you, you've joined these before, these town hall meetings. Anything, you can write your comment or question in the comments on Facebook or YouTube, and we can pull those questions up. So this is, please understand, we do not want this just to be a passive experience for you. I had the opportunity of doing an interview with the Family Life Network today regarding these town halls, and a question came up regarding, like, why are we doing these? The board and I, we love to see participation at board meetings, but those aren't necessarily designed to be open conversations. This is your opportunity to ask your questions. Mr. Warren and I will answer your questions to the best of our ability and as frankly and clearly as we can. But this is your opportunity. So type your comment in the comment section of either YouTube or Facebook. We will pull up questions as fast as we can and answer them. Please also know that when we get to the end, we will go back through the comments and make sure we get to everything, but don't be shy. Please throw your comments in. And with that, I think, Mr. Warren, we're ready to roll.
I'm ready to go.
Okay. So the first thing, let's just go through some of our points of what we're going to do today. We want to highlight some of the things that we are doing to simplify Arkport for families. Then we're going to talk about the surveys that are available, but also this is your opportunity. If you put in a suggestion into the chat and we talk about it, I will transfer those to the thought exchange that is shared with our entire community. We're going to go over a little bit of the history of ACS administration because it's a really interesting look to see how things have changed over time. We're going to look at local administrative structures, and then we're going to have a little perspective from Mr. Warren about how he is seeing things change over time, not just how complex schools have become, but also how we can, like, how the experience of administration has changed. And then we'll end up with some questions as well. So the first thing we're going to do is talk about We're looking for input from families about how to simplify Arkport, but that we also want to show that we are trying to do the same thing. Like, this is not just an ask of parents and what we can do differently. This year, our registration has changed up. The last few years, due to COVID, we have had to use online registration. Some people like online registration, or this is when you confirm all of your emergency contact information for your students. So we are actually sending home paper copies this year. We're trying to simplify. Sometimes it's just easier to look at a piece of paper and say, yep, that is correct, and be done with it, rather than logging into an online system, having to deal with that. We want to highlight something. One of the things parents ask is that they want to see their requests or their questions put into action. So last week, a parent asked, is it possible if a parent does like online registration, can they still do it that way? And we are going to put that in place for next year so that there will be paper or online. What fits you and your family best? Another change we've made is we've done social and emotional learning lessons for the last couple of years. And while we needed to really put a lot of effort into that in the last couple of years, we're paring them back and simplifying the number of times or the number of people who give SEL lessons at one time to our students. And what that's done is it allowed a little bit more of instruction time to come back in the day. Our students are still getting SEL lessons. They're still going to continue to do that because that's work we have to do, but we've simplified it. And so they're getting less of it, and it's probably going to stick a little bit more because it's not as repetitive. And the last thing we're really trying to encourage our families to use is the phone app. And we can go through questions about that. How do you download it? But that is our phone app is the most up-to-date information. We have corrected the fact that some events weren't showing up. If you look at the website and the events listed there, you will also see them on the phone app. That is the best place to get up-to-date information. Everybody on here right now, I believe, is logged in on Facebook. Yes, you are. I just checked. There are some people who don't use Facebook. There are some family members of ours that might not use Facebook. The phone app has everything that is pushed. We don't post to Facebook. We actually post to our phone app that then pushes it to Facebook. So everything we push out, news stories, the fun posts on Facebook, all of our events are on the phone app, and that's the best place to go. So we're trying in our own way to simplify it. The next slide goes to some of the comments that we have received from families regarding what they would like to see in the simplification. And to encourage the responses right now during this or on the survey, last week, one of the comments was the website is a little hard to navigate. It's a little confusing. Also, that they would like to see the Board of Education information more easily accessible. I have a meeting tomorrow with our website company to discuss exactly that. So what you put into these surveys, what you say tonight, we are acting on. And we're going to do a better job of coming back with that type of information for all of our families about we are putting these ahead. So you can see these are the top 3 comments in the survey right now. Early communication on events. Got it. I'm right there with you. 2 young kids. I need it said 7 times, weeks in advance for it to sink in. So the early communication makes sense. There should be more opportunities for families to interact with school. Everyone that works at this school is proud of what we do, and it only makes sense that we want our families to be involved as much as possible. And the last one, plan ahead for each quarter. We're going to do a better job of getting in our paper calendar that comes home with every newsletter more information for you, so there's more ways. So I'm going to pause there because this is supposed to be interactive. I'm going to give Mr. Warren, it takes a couple seconds. There's a little lag on the comments when they come through.
Okay.
So we got to give it a moment. But
Well, while that's happening, if you don't mind, I'll just kind of throw a couple of my 2 cents in as far as already some of the things I've observed. Certainly last week, one of the themes I kind of picked up on from the discussions we had was the idea of communication and how it can get better. But since then, Mrs. Smith and I have met with a parent who asked to come in and talk to us about that very topic, about some things that she was a little frustrated about, and we had a good conversation. And again, out of that conversation came the idea. One of the things that we're going to move forward with, it will certainly probably just has not been used in the past, but it's an easy thing to fix, is the sign that's out in front of the building there. So there's often people driving by that, and the comment I heard this last week from the parent was that, I drive by other schools and their sign is flashing this or flashing that, and apparently the sign out front hasn't been used a lot lately. So we're going to try to look into how we can make the best use of that as well. So again, one of the things that we hope to have come out of these conversations is that people are willing to, connect with us and share with us what's on their mind. Because most often when we hear things like that, it's really not too hard to implement some of them. So it's always a good thing to start that communication directly.
Thank you, Tanya. I do believe things have gotten better over the last 5 years. Thank you. And there's always room to improve. Absolutely. And there's those small things. And that makes me think, Mr. Warren, about there are 3 people who absolutely, if you feel as if you are not being heard, myself, Mr. Warren, or Mrs. Smith, contact us. Let us know, because that parent is, we want to meet. I've met with parents frequently over the last couple of weeks about issues. Please know, if you're feeling frustrated and not feeling as if you're heard, we will make the time, or a phone call. Not everybody can come into school. We understand that. So please put in any comments you might have, or questions about what we might be able to do differently. We're looking for your feedback. These are some great things. And I hopefully you have all participated in the online survey as well. But we'll move on. But if there's anything that you want us to talk about or address, don't hesitate to pop that into the chat, and we'll keep going.
Mr. Harper, we talked a little bit before that you thought maybe I would be able to see how many people are with us.
Yes.
I don't see that. I know Tanya because I've seen her comments. How many are with us tonight?
We have 25 people with us right now.
Oh, awesome.
That is that is very good news. All right, so we've got some comments coming in. 25 people is fantastic. So please understand, we want to address these issues, even if they're tough to read sometimes. The one issue that I've had is I've felt unheard with principals. You, Mr. Hafner, in the past many times have not listened and passed it off. So I hope we're able to open your schedule to listen. Absolutely. One thing and Tanya, thank you for writing that. One thing that is available, and I'm really trying to make myself more accessible. If you ever shoot me an email and I respond back, at the bottom of it, there is a bookings link, and you can click on that and find a time in my schedule that works for you. I don't need an explanation of why. I will call you, we will meet in person, but I'm making myself accessible. Now, during those conversations, understand I'm there to listen. If it is something that should be handled by a principal or somebody else in the school, I'm going to encourage you to do that. But I want to be accessible. And what you will see from the other principals and our counselors and other staff members is they have that same bookings link. So it is there for our community, for our families to get time with us. And we'll figure it out from there. Correct, Mr. Warren?
Yes, absolutely. But one of the things that there have been times even this year when we've been talking about an issue where you said, Mr. Warren, that's yours. And it's totally expected. That's the way I think that I'd rather have it. If there's something related to the 7 through 12 situation and it's something I can handle, I feel like I would rather have the opportunity to address it directly, and then talking with the folks and talking with parents and through the whatever conversations I have with the people. If it's something that they aren't happy with, then certainly would be something then it would be easily passed on to you to add on to what the decision had been at the building level. But I don't want to pass the opportunity on to someone else when it's something I maybe could handle at my level. So.
In all of our philosophies here, honestly, Tanya, and all the parents that are joined, we're up to 32, Mr. Warren.
Yeah,
so we're doing good.
Yes, sir.
Our philosophy is make contact. We will help you find the person that you need to talk to, or the person who can help you the best. So don't hesitate. Use those booking links. We will find you the person, and hold us accountable. Yvonne asked, what survey are you talking about? So that link has gone out with a couple different things. There's 2 thought exchanges that are tied to these topics. So I'm just going to pull up the thought exchanges right now so you can see. Just give me a second. So they went out with the text messages relating to this meeting. And the town hall, so there are 2 thought exchanges. One has to do with what should we be looking for in a principal. So that is this thought exchange. And actually what I will do, Yvonne, is I'm going to put the links to these thought exchanges right in the chat. So if you have not had an opportunity to participate, so there's one regarding what should we be looking for in a principal, and then there is one that is dealing with how can we simplify the experience. So right now, Dave's going to give me a second or two, and I'm going to put the links to those exchanges right in the chat for everyone.
I'll give you a second or two, but it would take me a minute or two to do what you're about to accomplish.
Okay, so this is the first one, and this has to do with what should we be looking for in an administrator. So this first one is, I'm going to hit enter, then I'm going to give the description right behind it. This is what So that's the first one. And the second one is how can we simplify? And Yvonne, I have already put you down as I need to look at why you are not getting text messages. So I will look into that tomorrow. We'll solve something tonight. The next one is for how to simplify Arkport. Okay, Tanya, yeah, Mr. Hahn was great at his job. So what I would encourage you to do, Tanya, is get into that thought exchange about what should we be looking for in an administrator and talk about those traits that you really appreciated about Mr. Hahn. So that's what we're looking for in that one. So we're going to jump over to keep adding your comments, keep asking questions, please. So looking at the next thing is the structure of Arkport administration. So as we've talked about this, as we talk about simplifying Arkport, as we talk about what should we look at for our next administrator, sometimes simplifying makes us think about what we experienced, because I look at my high school and elementary experience, and it was easier. It seems simpler. Things have gotten more complex over time. And so what I wanted to do is kind of look at why has that happened? it hasn't just gotten complex for complexity's sake. Schools have changed. I'll just say I graduated in 1997. It's very different now than 1997. I won't ask Mr. Warren when he graduated. It's probably a little different too. So what we did, and I will link these presentations, I will put them in the chat for everybody to look at. So we had a question. Let me just get to it. I'm sorry. We have a question about why a new admin. So last year, Mr. Hahn, our 712 principal, took a position at Bath, and we are very excited for him. It's a great position for him, but we are looking to replace that position, Sharon. So that's why we're talking about what to look for in an administrator. The board was very adamant about getting some feedback from our community about that process. Thank you for reminding me, Sharon, that one of the things I mentioned last time at our last week's town hall is that with this hiring process, our community will be involved. So when we get to the point of bringing in finalists, there will be a faculty and staff group, a admin group, a parent and community member group that will be part of this hiring process. So we're not just extending, we don't want just your comments about in these town halls. We also want you to be involved in the process of hiring our next administrator. So if we look through, and again, I'll put all these links into the chat for everybody. If we look at the history of admin, I mean, it starts in the 1800s. You know, the admin, the administrator, they didn't call them administrators. They were the head principal or head teacher. They were tending coal fires. That's what they were doing. 1936 is when Arkport first opened. It actually was the class of 1937 who was the first class to be in Arkport. But we started in 1936, right around the time of Pearl Harbor. And that really, Pearl Harbor, World War II, changed the purpose of education in America. It became, I mean, you can see on there, schools became the democratic leader on the home front. Schools and admin were in charge of producing the next generation. As we go through time, all of a sudden in 1964, we added an assistant principal. And this was interesting for me. I went through every single yearbook for the 1936 on. And we got an assistant principal all of a sudden in 1964, because right after Russia launches Sputnik, schools got the blame for the US falling behind. So there was a renewed interest in schools becoming stronger. So we added admin. Over the course of time, we add more administrators. Schools are getting more and more complex. 1977, we had 3 administrators. And then all of a sudden in 1981, we had 2. And I was wondering why, and then it clicked in. We had the 1980s recession. So the demands on school change over time, but we also have to reflect the economic reality of our country. So it makes sense that when the recession hit in the 80s, everybody was having to cut back. And so the same thing happened to our administrative staff. And as we go through and look at the changes over time, we have the Columbine shooting in 1999. That, while it was not the first large-scale violence on a school campus, it was the one that caught the attention of America. And so all of a sudden, administrative roles, teachers, aides, every faculty and staff member in school was now charged with not only teaching, but keeping kids safe. And that was a huge shift in the culture. Mr. Warren, do you want to discuss, hate to put you on the spot, but you had some good thoughts on that this last week?
Well, yeah, I was kind of waiting for an opportunity to throw the idea of how things have changed in administration personally with the experience I've had. So, um, yeah, Mr. Harper already referred to it. I graduated a long time ago, so I've been an administrator and teacher in Watkins Glen for 38 years, and 13 of those years were as a principal. But I clearly remember how going into as administration to get my degree, coming out of the classroom, I was really getting excited about all the things they're talking about. As a principal, you'll be the instructional leader. You'll be instructional leader. And I was a good teacher, and I said I have a lot to offer in that role. But the very first week I was an administrator, very first week I had students in a building as an administrator, was 9/11. So the role of principal in my mind immediately changed drastically. Already we were working with thoughts about Columbine, but now we're worried about the students' well-being. And I spent most of that year just being aware of the role the leader of a building can take when it has to do with the mental and physical care of not only the kids, but the staff. And throughout the next, 11 years as a principal in Watkins, everybody would not dispute the fact that, the role of principal in those particular time frames with disciplinarian, a teacher evaluator, school leader, building leader, and all those things were expected. But the things that have changed even since then, after I retired in 2014, I was privileged enough to go and become principal in every level. I was elementary principal, a middle school principal, a high school principal, 13 different roles. But the issues that I see now that maybe some people aren't quite aware of is the fact that in addition to being careful about the mental and emotional state of the kids and the staff, with the new social pressures, with the computer and the phones and everything else, it compounds the daily routine where those things sometimes have a way of taking over what's going on in the building. So my role as a instructional leader is still very important to me, but there are so many other factors that we deal with through the course of the day that sometimes we have to shift and make sure we're meeting those needs. The teen suicide rate is up, the social media, the cyberbullying is constant. The shootings are never out of our minds, and there isn't a day that I go into any building that I don't often, always think about, those kind of things. But in addition to all those other things, it's unique to this group of students coming through now. They had to go through the pandemic. So again, there's another whole layer of issues about learning loss and what can be done. So it is something that needs to be taken into consideration when you start looking at what kind of qualities do you want in a new administrator in your district? What role do you want them to take? And as long as I'm on a roll, I'll talk about, small schools often have lack of resources because they are so small, and often ask administrators and counselors and teachers to do a little extra here and a little extra there. So again, you'll have to find that balance, I think, to meet the needs of the district, but at the same time trying to match up the skills of the administration that are already in your district. Each district is different, so the role has changed tremendously, and it's a pretty complex day.
So Dave, we got a question. This is a pretty good one from Amy. Is there a specific or suggested ratio to students to administrators?
Well, one of the things I just mentioned at the end there, every district is different. It really is. I mean, the needs of the students and the demographics and some of the socioeconomic things of different districts. I don't know if I've never ever come across a suggested or some specific ratio. I think you have to kind of determine that with the district that you're in. I mean, the needs of the kids are the most important part, but in some cases, districts would probably settle on a different ratio, but whatever is best for them. So no, I don't think there is one that's a perfect one unless you have a lot of input from the district that fits your district the best.
So going with that, Amy, one of the things that some of the comments that we're seeing in what is important, and we'll get to some of those comments at the end about what is important in a principal to the people who have participated in the survey, is that better communication. They want them visible. And one of the things that is really apparent in schools now versus when all of us went to school is the need for that connection. We think about our favorite teachers when we were growing up, even our favorite administrators. In high school, my favorite administrator was our vice principal. She made time to connect with me. And that's really the ratio we're looking at of, do our admin staff have enough time to make those connections with students? And so that's really a process that we're looking at for right now. Is we can't overbook our admin to the point where they can't interact with the students. Amy, all the parents, all the guardians on this phone call, we love all of our students and we care for them. And we want to make sure they have a good experience, and that takes time. And so really looking at making sure we have the time. I'm going to show you, Amy, a couple breakdowns in the next slide about some different admin staff across our area, so you can see some comparisons. So maybe that will help you as well. Tara, yes, phones are part of the problem. 2007, the iPhone came out. Nothing has been the same since then. Then you add the phone, and then Common Core, DASA. All of these things have added to the responsibilities of administrators. And phones, we didn't have phones when I was in high school. There was still issues, but those issues, it took more effort to make them bigger. And that's what it is too easy now for things to get out of control. Sarah, with that being said, how about no cell phone policy for students and teachers? Not once did we ever see a teacher with a cell phone in their hand. Absolutely, Sarah. And depending on the classroom, we are much better. And Dave, you've seen the evolution. We're much better. When it was a new technology, it was wild. Now, our teachers, depending on the classroom, there are different rules. Some teachers encourage the use when it is for the class, for the curriculum. We have some teachers who have cell phone jail on the back of their door. If you guys know, like the shoe organizers that sit on the back of your closet doors and you slide your shoes, some teachers have that for cell phones. And so I would really encourage you, Sarah, or any other parent or guardian, talk to your teachers about what their policy is in their classroom so you can help reinforce that with the students. I know the elementary school, low elementary, don't quote me on 5th and 6th grade, that there is a no cell phone policy in the elementary, and I think that extends to 6th grade. I'll double check on that. But I encourage you to talk to the teachers and find out what they are.
And just also, I'll add to that too, since I've come into the district here, it's very similar to the other districts I've been in, at least at the stage we're at with the use of cell phones. The students are not allowed to use at all cell phones in the classroom unless it is approved by each teacher. So I always ask the question when I go in every district. First time I have a meeting with them, I'll say, how many of you kids have a cell phone with you right now? There isn't 5 kids in the whole audience that doesn't have one with them. So that's the issue we're dealing with. So we're very, very aware of students using cell phones, but in the classroom it's not allowed. In the cafeteria when they go to lunch, it is allowed and at this stage. I've been in districts before where the cell phones have been denied at all. Then you start working with a whole new set of problems. But this one seems to be the most consensus of the schools that I've been in.
Angela, how come we don't use the same process for hiring coaches? We are always open to adapting our process. We are starting with admin because that is such a high profile position. Now, I was a coach. I love our coaching staff. I believe there's the importance of athletics and connecting some of our students, just like our other programs connect students to school. like our archery or clay target. So we're starting with admin because they are a position that has so much effect. But I'll bring it up to the board. That was one of the questions. Angela, I'll put your comment in to the thought exchange so that it can be rated by other people as well. And going with the phones too, it is a reality we have to live with. And so schools have had to start to really, our priority is how do we teach kids to respectfully use phones in an appropriate manner. Time brings up, they just become sneaky. They do. And so part of this is just like every piece of technology that comes along, schools have to deal with it and have to learn how to teach our kids how to be respectful. All right, so going on, Amy, I tell you, there is another, let me just switch over to my other slides. So the next slide talks about that ratio for admin to students. So I give you these examples. So we start at Keshequa at the top, and I wanted to use local districts so they're easier to compare. I mean, we just know where they are. We know who they are. So Keshequa with 573 students, Arkport's right in the middle with 475, and we go down to JT at 375. So we have like plus 100 students, minus 100 students. And you can see that there really is a lot of variability between districts. Keshequa at 573 has 5 administrators. Alfred Amrand at 558 has 3 administrators. Arkport, 475, we have 3. Genesee Valley, 461, they have 4. Avoca at 386, they have 4. So going to your question about is there a suggested ratio, it really is school specific. Keshequa, for whatever reason, might need that number of administrators. And so really, and that's why it's so important to add your comments to that exchange about what is important for all of you when we're looking at an administrator. What are those traits? What are those qualities? Because a lot of people end up asking, like, what is the usual structure? What is the structure? Liz, you bring it up. Is Keshequa the only one with multiple buildings on this list? Yes, I believe it is the only one. Alfred Amrand has kind of 2 buildings that are connected. But Genesee Valley, I believe, is 1 building now. Avoca is definitely 1. JT actually has 2, now that I think about it. So even that is variable. JT does have their elementary building, their high school. So even that is variable. And so it becomes less about what is standard or normal, and it is what our community, what our families, what our faculty and staff are looking for in their administration. And that becomes the biggest part of how we organize. And what I also want to point out is that there is no, Avoca has a middle and high school principal and an elementary principal, where we have an elementary principal and a high school principal. So it is also dependent on the people that you have in your district. And that is something that we know what we grew up with. We have graduates of Arkport on this Zoom, this town hall right now. We always think about what we had as the normal, but I just want to reinforce there is no normal. There is no average when it comes to schools, because it's dependent on what the community needs, faculty and staff needs, and the people you have in place.
And I would say too that when the final decision is being made for this district, there's going to obviously be some opportunity and discussion about, well, what can we share amongst the different administrators? But understand too that, and I'm sure it's not something that's going to go lightly with everybody, but that when you start layering more responsibilities on an administrator, they probably could do the jobs that are assigned to them. But the problem sometimes is that if that's the case, sometimes some of those responsibilities in other areas take a hit. In other words, they don't have the time to do what they would do without having so many layers of it's reaching that good balance between the best use of each person in the district. So.
Liz asks, do these admin lists include sports admin? That would be our athletic directors. Liz, no, they do not. The only one that does would be Avoca, but that is because it is a specific job. In Avoca, they are the director of athletics and special programs. So this person runs athletics, their after school program, and their summer program. All of these other districts have an athletic director. I didn't put it on there because I only put identified administrative positions. Mr. Warren has been talking about his experience. I just think, I didn't add the line for everybody that is watching. This might seem like a lot of districts. Bradford, Watkins Glen. Those were your
38 years.
Yep. 38 years
of experience.
I retired.
Yep.
Campbell, Addison, Spencer Van Etten, and now Arkport have all been in retirement in his interim positions. Right. So I found it impressive, the breadth of experience, but we did want to point out Bradford and Watkins Glen were regular.
Yeah, and I shared last week when that came up. It was one of those things as an administrator, and you're looking at hiring, or the one of the things you always look at is the work experience. And it looks like this guy on the screen has a hard time keeping a job because he's been to so many places. But I assure you that my experience in Watkins Glen of 35 years and 3 at Bradford, and again, you can see the size of those schools. Certainly started out at a small school, so I've had the luxury of having a small school experience and even a little bit larger. But after those 38 years, the positions I ended up filling, both in Watkins all the way through to Arkport, were a result of superintendents calling me to see if I was available to come and join the team. So the experience has been wonderful for me. I continue to do it because I enjoy it. And when we talked in the summer with Mr. Harper and some of the staff here, it seemed like I had a good fit for what the district was looking for. And I'm hoping to be able to, share some experience that helps make the decision of a new principal that much more worthy. So I'm glad to be here.
And I'll go back to one of the priorities for the board. It was not to rush into a decision, to take a little bit of time to go through this process with our community. Sarah, you asked the question, have teachers been surveyed to see if they feel supported by the current level of administration? Are they wanting more or less? Yes, the faculty and staff were given the opportunity to give their feedback. And I'll equate it to the teachers are also, Mr. Warren, myself have talked about the demands on administration and making sure that they do have the time to make the connections with faculty and staff. The faculty are saying the same things, and we are doing what we can. We're not just trying to do this for administration. We are doing this for our faculty, staff as well, because you can be pulled in too many directions. One of the examples I gave at the beginning, Sarah, was how we pared back some of the SEL. Now our students are still getting social emotional lessons, and that's needed, but we simplified it, and we also simplified it for some of our teachers, and that has been really appreciated. And one of the things that we've heard from our teachers, Sarah, is access to the administration. And it can be small or large. It doesn't have to be an emergency every time, but they have asked for their administration to be more accessible for whatever may occur. Am I right on that, Mr. Warren? What's your perspective on that?
Yep.
So going to some of the things that, now this is that second survey going back. One of the surveys was regarding how we can simplify things. this is the survey regarding principals. So these are the top 3 thoughts that have been shared so far. The principal needs to create a safe environment for everybody. Now, I'm going to add context to this. I don't know if this is what it's meant, but this is how I interpreted this. That safe environment, our number one priority is always for our students. But that safe environment has to be created by our principal, for our faculty and staff. And I need everybody on this line to hear this, or on this town hall. That includes our families. You need to feel comfortable and welcome and supported in our district as well. Next one, consistency. That came up in somebody's comment. Consistency across the classrooms, kindness and character. And then that third one, a principal needs to be visible, not only in the community, but the school. Relationships are made face-to-face. Some of what we are doing right now, COVID and the pandemic complicated things just on itself. And that relationships are made face-to-face. By necessity, we are online, we are separated, and we've got to draw some of that back. That's why I was happy when Mr. Warren and Mrs. Smith met with the parents face-to-face. We want that contact with you. Going back, it looks like I missed one of the questions. Do you have a comparison for tax base for those schools? I will say we are one of the largest for those schools. Andrew, I'm going to answer your question, and please tell me if I'm not answering it the right way. I can tell you that for our area, now some of you might be familiar with the BOCES. Like we have the BOCES programs, our CTE, Career and Technical Education. Our students go up to the Wildwood campus in Hornell. Our BOCES consists of 21 districts. And those districts go from Canasarega all the way to the other end, Spencer, Van Etten, and Waverly. So our BOCES is huge, 21 districts. So that's everybody in between, Corning, Elmira, Camp El Savona. Andrew, Arkport is the most efficient cost per student for education out of the entire BOCES. We are the most cost efficient and we get the best results. So tax base is hard to quantify. We actually have one of the better tax bases being next to Hornell. But per student, we are the most efficient in our BOCES. So what we spend per student is the best in our BOCES. And I think that goes to not maybe the tax base, but how we are more efficient than districts that are spending more money or maybe have more administration. So Andrew, I don't know if that answered your question. Please pop in another one if I didn't answer what you were asking. Yvonne asked, do you have specific job duty statements that list specific duties of every non-teaching position, not just administration, but HR, business official, technology? Many schools combine these positions. Thank you, Andrew, for confirming I did a somewhat adequate job of answering a question. So Yvonne, I'm actually going to bring up something. Now, this was created when somebody asked a very similar question. We forget sometimes that we live school. Mr. Warren and I, I've had other jobs, but the majority of my career has been in a school. We know what happens in schools. And so somebody kept asking me, who are the administrators in the school? And I kept saying, well, Mr. Warren, Claire Smith, myself. And the person said, no, who makes the school run? And I was like, that's what they're asking. And for everybody else that doesn't work in a school, administrative staff, relating to the running of a business or organization. So, Yvonne, I will put a link to this document I created. And this is the behind the scenes. You all know the teachers who teach your students. That makes sense. But the elementary office, student services, district office, other district staff. And so this document, I think, goes to exactly what you're asking, Yvonne. It goes through and talks about what is each person's roles and responsibilities. And this is not intensive. Like I didn't want to put everything in there. But Mrs. Covington, our elementary, she's the PK6 secretary. She's our registrar, and she's our substitute coordination, right? Amy Harris, who's our pre-K6 school counselor. It gives you those roles and responsibilities. It's a little pullback, but then you can go through and look at all of the people in the building that Tricia Smith, our nurse, school nurses, special place for them. They are amazing. But it also gives you some detail about how, it is calling you when your child is sick and having to get them, but also the other work that she does. Mrs. Smith is part of the process for making sure that all of our students have sport clearance. Some people might assume that is just our athletic director, but Tricia has an active role. So this goes through all of the people and their roles. Angel Hoffman is our behavior specialist. It gives you her roles and responsibilities. So it goes through all these positions, including the district office. So you can see our business official, our HR manager. It goes through the other district staff. So Yvonne, I think this is exactly what you were asking for. And I'll make sure that this gets posted for our parents to see, because I think this is a great guide. Especially, sometimes we lose track of people change. And so you might remember some of our parents and caregivers on this call might remember Sarah Eggleston, who was a former guidance counselor or school counselor. They're not guidance counselors anymore. I apologize. They are school counselors. She went to JT, but you might remember Sarah Eggleston. Some of you might remember Brett Talbot. So who are those people now? So I will post this in the chat for everybody to see, and I'll make sure this is available. So Yvonne, thank you for reminding me that I created this, and I think this will be perfect to share with everybody. So I will post that at the end in the chat. Just to remind everybody that this recording will be on our Facebook page and our YouTube page to come back to. You will even be able to go back to the comments. So if you're like, where did Mr. Harper post that list of everybody? You'll be able to go back there and find this, and it will always be on our Facebook page and our YouTube page. So I think, yes, that is the end of our presentation. We ended up at 35. I think our max number was 36.
I'm really impressed with that number.
This is, and I thank everybody for joining us. This has served us really well over the last couple of years, Mr. Warren. It's an opportunity. It's hard to get to school sometimes.
Yeah.
So that is the end of our presentation. Kayla, thank you. Yep, I'm going to post that resource. I'm going to do it at the end. I just don't want to take time and you guys watch me try to post something right now, but I'll make sure I get that up. Can you start doing this for board meetings? Now, I am part of board meetings, but they are not my meetings. So that is a request that I can bring up to the Board of Education. If we were to start even just posting them, just a live stream, because again, board meetings aren't necessarily meant for this interaction of questions back and forth. But if I will pose that question to the Board of Education, that would be something they would need to decide to start doing, of live streaming the board meetings, but I will bring that up to them, Angela. And that's something that you can ask them directly for. Our board members are in the community. So if that's something you would like to see, that is absolutely something you can ask for. Our Board of Education actually has a email address at school, boe@arkportcsd.org. So that is a place that you can send them messages. You can also contact, if you want to get them a question or a statement, you can send that to Mrs. Cork here. But there's always ways to get that information to them. But I will pass that along, Angela. Tanya, we need to address making bullying punishments harsher. Everybody gets frustrated with bullying, and we do need to work on making sure, and I'm going to go to your next comment, Tanya, and listening to the children being bullied. That's where we have to start. And because regarding the situation, and Dave, you're closer to the principalship than I am. Every situation is different. Just saying harsher doesn't necessarily work all the time, but I'm going to let Dave speak on that.
Yeah, and I wouldn't. Mr. Harper has asked me to kind of, as I'm, before I leave, to share some of my philosophies and some of the techniques and some of the ways, things that have worked best for me. But I can assure you that as an administrator in any building I've ever been in, that when bullying comes across my table, my desk, everything that I'm working on becomes second nature. So I move that to the top of the list, and I have conversations with the kids. I have conversations with everybody involved. So I agree that the bullying needs immediate attention. I'm not so sure, like Mr. Harper said, that the punishments being harsher. I'll never make a decision that's not for the best benefit of all kids involved. It's a hard thing to deal with, and it's unfortunate that it comes up almost every day. And it's not just the bullying; it's more often starts with cyberbullying. So it's an issue that I think that when you look for a new principal, be sure that that's something that's high on their list to deal with, because it does need to be addressed every single day in a fair way. So.
I just needed like 10 seconds more to post this link. So this is the link for administrative positions. Now, it makes sense now what the person was asking for, because when I hear administrative positions, I think principals. These are the people who aren't necessarily seen as much as the teachers. And so you can absolutely go to our website and look for all our teachers. But these are the people who might not be less common and less known. So I'm going to put this in, and there is your link for what I just showed you, that graphic where it breaks down who does what.
Can I address the one comment that Tanya just put there that had to do with kids come home and say there's no point in saying anything because they just talk to them? And I do hear that all the time. You know, there's no reason to talk to anybody because nobody ever does anything. One of the things that you have to understand is that when something is done for a consequence for other students, which more often than not, that is definitely what happens, its confidentiality doesn't allow us to share that this is what happened to the other kid. This is what we did. And I think that part of the important thing as far as getting to know your administrators to be able to trust that they are doing it in the right way. And believe me, I hear that from kids all the time, and I assure the kids that they're doing the right thing. They need to share it and talk to people. And I also let them know that there is consequence that come that can't always be shared with everybody.
And one thing that I want to bring up, because things change in the schools. And while there is a time and place to bring students together to work through issues, Mr. Warren just had one today. That was a perfect example of when we needed to sit two kids down. I need to state it for everybody on this town hall that 5-10 years ago, it might have been a practice to bring the bullied student and the bully together to try to work through that. That is not what we do anymore. And that is a full stop. If there is a report of bullying, we do not bring the students together. That is an outdated, and it does not work, because what that does is it brings the bullied and the bullied to the same level. And that is not what we do anymore. So while there are times we will bring students together, and we need to be able to do that as administration, the old view of bring the bullied and the bullied together is not what we do.
I would agree that 90% of the time it's not a good tactic. Yep.
Now, we do work on building relationships, parents and guardians. There might be a time down the road where we bring people together, but in that immediate situation, it's not what we do anymore. All right. So we're up to 43.
Wonderful.
Patty, Tanya, please, we are doing our best. And the only thing I can ask you to do, and that's going back to Tanya's comment earlier about we have our bookings links available in our emails. So if we respond to you, you get access to book an appointment with us. And please continue to be advocates for your students and keep engaging us. And we're here, and we're trying to do the best for your students as well. So that is the end of our presentation. Mr. Warren and I will stick around for a couple minutes if there's any more questions. If you sign off, please understand you can always come back to the recording to see if you missed anything. But I really appreciate everybody's time. And we have another in-person session next week. Feel free to join. The conversation will be slightly different. The information we go over will not be. But I do want to let you know that my plan is to continue these, and whether it's bi-monthly after we get through this next couple months, but I really do, we really do appreciate this feedback. So thank you for joining us. We'll stick around for a minute, but we've taken up a good hour of your time, and we appreciate it. So have a great night, and don't hesitate to get in touch with us.
Thank you, Megan.
We'll bring it up. And see, there you go. Mr.
There it
Warren
is.
is great. Kid can always go to one. We'll take it.
Yep.
And that is what we're looking for in an administrator. All right. We'll give it another minute, see if any comments come in, but otherwise. Oh, okay. People are watching each other. Bring it up.
Thank you, Sarah.
Mrs. Hellis, that's why we're having these conversations. To make sure that those qualities that we see in Mr. Warren, that we saw in Mr. Hahn, that I remember I went to a high school of 2,000 kids, 9 through 12. I walked through the front door my first day, Granger Ward. My principal said, "Hi, Jesse, welcome." I was like, "How do you know my name?" I remember that of one of the reasons I stand in the hallway in the mornings and afternoon is so that I have those interactions with students. So that is why we're having these conversations, to make sure that we can find a principal that has all those traits that we want. Hey, Mr. Warren, right there. I think that, we might be able to put some pressure on him.
A little bit, maybe. Right. Yeah.
All right, we're going to sign off. Please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. We will do these more. We really appreciate your time, and we hope we get more opportunities to talk. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a good night.
Good night.